Hey everyone, this is Mike and Andrea from Team Witch Doctor. We just came off our fight against Whiplash, which was a pretty crazy fight.
So I was super excited about fighting Whiplash. So far we fought Shatter and Captain Shredder, which are great opponents. But this is our first chance to fight somebody that's been in the top 16 before. So we knew if we're going to make it to the top 16, you have to beat somebody that's been in the top 16. So for us, this could be a turning point in the whole event.
And the way BattleBots does it is, depending on how handily you win your match, the next match they try to give you a more difficult match just to see kind of where your robot's at. They don't give you 4 easy matches. And if you keep winning easy matches, they keep giving you harder and harder matches. And likewise, if you lose a really hard match, they usually dial it down a little bit. So since we're 2-0 at this point going into this fight, they gave us Whiplash, who was a semi-finalist last year, who I think last year ended with a 5-2 record.
It's impressive.
Very impressive. And their robot is super reliable. Matt is an insanely good driver.
I think if you say Matt's the best driver in the sport, nobody would argue it.
I think most people think that. Yeah. I think it's hard to argue. They fought a lot of tough robots. Warrior Dragon, Bite Force, Son of Waiachi, Tombstone, Yeti, you name them all. I mean, pretty much the hardest robots out there they've fought. So, and beaten or come close to beating most of them.
And now Whiplash is known for being a super reliable robot. They don't break down. Obviously, we've had some issues with that already. This year, our weapon motors have been smoking our first match. So it's the first thing we need to do is get the robot to a point where we can last 3 minutes with Whiplash. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if you can outdrive them.
Yep, so we've tried a few things. Every fight so far, we've burnt up our weapon motors. We're using faster motors this year than we've ever used before, so the weapon has a lot more energy. We're hitting a lot harder, but because of that, it's a lot more drag and load on the weapon motors, and they just can't last the 3 minutes. So going into this fight, we're already nervous. We've had reliability issues already. We haven't really changed much for this fight. We keep adjusting current limiting on the weapon motor to hope that after a hit, the weapon has to spin back up to speed, and that's 250 amps going through those motors after every hit.
So we started off in a Shatter fight. The current limit was set to about 250. Now we're well below that, and this is kind of the last chance that we're going to take to see if we can solve it on current limiting alone. So let's talk a little more about what we did to get ready, because I personally was really worried that we were going to get flipped upside down. I know we have a nice self-rider now, but we haven't used it yet on the show, and I just wanted it to work. I didn't want to lose upside down on this match.
In this season, we've been really good about doing preventative maintenance on the robot. So after every match, we take the robot completely apart, check chains, bearings, screws, everything, just to make sure that we're not going to go into our next fight and lose because of something that we could have caught in the pit. So the night before this fight, we get the batteries in and we're getting ready, and we put the robot in the test arena and do a simple drive test, a weapon test, and typically we don't do a self-righting test because we haven't had to use the self-righter up until this point. But I just twitch the self-righter just to make sure that it seems to be working, and it visually seems slower to me than typical. It's pretty fast, and in the test arena I look at it and it just seems slow. So the first thing we think is maybe the motor's bad or there's some current limiting or chain issue or whatever. So we take the robot out of the test arena, take it back to the pit, take it apart. We start taking it. The self-righting mechanism in our robot is the most difficult thing to access. It's buried down under the weapon motors, behind the drive motors, under the speed controllers.
You basically have to take a lot of the robot apart to get down into that.
Yeah.
So as a team, we were kind of thinking, what could it be? And the way that the motor couples onto the gearbox basically has a shaft collar. So it's just this metal ring that's tightened onto the shaft with one screw. So the best theory we had was that was a little bit loose and maybe it was slipping. So basically we had to take a lot of the robot apart, even though it was ready to go essentially. It's just to tighten down this one screw. But this year we have a team of 8. It's the biggest we've ever been, and we told ourselves before the start of the event that if there was ever an option to do more work, to have more peace of mind, we would do it. Because that's how you win these matches. We can't take any chances. So we did the work. We tightened that screw, and it was night and day. It was super, super different. It was absolutely the issue.
And it was definitely loose. It was finger tight at best. So
yeah.
So I got at least a half a turn on that set screw, and
Whiplash is a really unique opponent. We have different armor configurations for Witch Doctor, and we actually had a list of all the robots up on the wall, and we bucketed them into different types of weapons. So we had one configuration for horizontal spinners, which pretty much everybody has at this point. One for vertical spinners, one for like lifter crushers. But the thing with Whiplash is that they kind of fit into more than one category. They're obviously a lifter. I consider that their primary weapon. They're clearly a vertical spinner too. And they do that move where they kind of turn the robot around and put their arm up and hit you from the top. So they're kind of also an overhead weapon. So they didn't really fit neatly into any of the buckets we had. So we had to do the heavy top armor, which is the ribs that don't have any holes, what we used against Shatter. But we also wanted to have the more reinforced front armor that we don't usually use for a lifter. And we didn't have enough weight for both. So basically we have front armor, what we used against Shatter, which is a plate like this that doesn't have any of this reinforcement on the bottom. And this part missing means that we can add the weight to the ribs. So we wanted to have both. So what we did was we took this armor and we actually, this part used to be a lot bigger, and we actually cut it back until we had enough weight to use both because we didn't want to take any chances with Whiplash. So during this match, you had this very small task of outdriving the best driver in the sport. So how are you feeling going into this match?
I'm terrified. I mean, I know Matt is an excellent driver. He's fought all different types of robots. You know, in addition to the excellent quality of robots that he's fought, all different types: horizontal spinners, vertical spinners, flippers. I mean, so he's versatile. He knows how to adjust his tactic, and obviously I have to be able to adjust my tactic as well. So I think the obvious thing is we're trying to avoid his lifter because he's going to try to flip us, get us out, flip us over, and put our self-rider to work. But as you see at the beginning of the match, the first thing I do is drive straight into his lifter. And he does lift us up. But I noticed that once he gets us up all the way, so Witch Doctor's rear wheels actually stick out past the rear armor, which allows us to get traction when he flips us up like this. I'm able to put drive the robot in reverse and actually back myself off the lifter and down back onto the floor. The first time I do it, I realize that the risk of him being able to flip us from the front is a lot lower. In the first few head-to-head attacks, I actually hit this and bend it up pretty good. Which this is supposed to be vertical, so it's actually bent back. It winds up being like this at the end of the match. But anyway, the first hit, it gets bent up, and I realize pretty easily that I can get under that. So the next few head-to-head charges, I'm trying to get this thing off of his robot, and eventually it does come off. Obviously, that didn't really inhibit his robot from moving around. He just kept going.
Yeah. Well, he even mentions that in his post-fight interview that the fact that this was up like this is actually blocking his lifter and keeping him away a little bit more. So anytime there's damage to your robot like that, it's just kind of, makes you a little more nervous.
Mm-hmm. We do get one of his wheels off very early in the match, but the robot's so well balanced. It's 4-wheel drive, 4 independent motors that are, I think, chained together. So, I mean, they have plenty of power, plenty of redundancy in their drive. So one wheel coming off, that's nothing.
Yeah, Chris and Kenny kept mentioning, like, oh, they have one less wheel, so Maddie's struggling. But, I mean, it didn't look like he was struggling.
No.
He was doing just fine.
No, 3, 4 wheels looked exactly the same to me. Maybe if 2 more came off, they'd have a little bit of an issue.
Yeah. So my favorite part of this match was when you got him up on the screws. Twice. So I'm sure everybody remembers what we call Screw Gauzy now in our match against Blacksmith, where he got us up on the screws. He thought he had won the match. He's practically celebrating already. And then the screws reverse, kick us off, and the match keeps going to a full 3 minutes. So obviously after that experience, you hit him into the screws. First of all, you know he could probably get off because he's such a versatile robot, and you know the screws reverse. So you're waiting right there. You're just waiting for him to get off. I love that.
Mm-hmm. And he does come right off, and I charge for another hit. And luckily, he's kind of bouncing around, and I kind of plow through him, but just get enough contact to bounce him back into the screws on the other screws. And he lands perfectly butt first, and I thought he was stuck, but in hindsight, I should have realized that his self-riding arm pivots from the rear, so that was probably best case for them to get right out of the screws.
I mean, nobody's blaming you for not going for a third. I think two was pretty good.
2 would have been good too, but.
And then it's looking really good. It's a really tight fight. He had lost his vertical spinner pretty early on in the fight. His lifter was still working, I believe.
Yeah, we talked to them after the fight, and they said that the belt drive system on their spinner, I guess we hit it directly and it exploded one of the pulleys or something. But
yeah, and these matches are so intense while we're actually in it that a lot of times we don't remember what happened immediately after. Like, to be totally honest, I don't remember his lifter not working during the match at all. But at the end, he showed us that the chain was broken. So your robot's just unstoppable. You don't even need wheels.
I know. Yep, broke the chain.
Was it a link or like master link or just
It wasn't master link. No, it wasn't a master link either. That 50-50.
And just like in our first match, you saw some smoke coming out of Witch Doctor here, which we were hoping we had fixed. I think you did a great job of still keeping aggressive and keeping on him. I think a lot of times it's easy to get really discouraged. It's just kind of try to buy some space and wait for the end of the match. But I think it was critical that you stayed on him and, you know, tried to at least not lose points during those last 30 seconds. So moving on from this match, obviously our biggest focus is going to be to get those weapon motors fixed. We're super happy with how Witch Doctor is doing. Everything else is working really well. We just have to keep that weapon working. We have a few ideas, so we're going to make some changes for the next match, and hopefully we get it fixed. So I hope you enjoyed this match. For me, it was one of my favorite matches that we've ever been a part of.
mine too.
Thank you to the Vasquez family and Whiplash for an incredible fight. It's so much fun to see two robots, you know, go at it for that long and that intently. I mean, I was as nervous watching it again as I was the first time we were in it, so it was really a blast. Thanks for watching this BattleBots breakdown. Stay tuned for more videos and make sure to subscribe to our channel. We're really making an effort to have a ton of content, and we're going to be doing these after every match.